Shalom, more praises to Yahweh Shemashah B'Shem Kadash, the one is the elders and apostles, great most on it will work real well. Best and salutations to the hopeful elect of Israel. Back again, on Fresh and Fit, analyzing what they're saying, biblical red pill, Bible truth. He's gonna briefly talk about like marriage and yeah, what is marriage? Because a lot of people have the mindset of a formal, wedding, a formal wedding, signing papers, having a priest there, sanction it, all these laws and stipulations. That's a lot of people's brains. That's how they think of what marriage is. When marriage is simply sex, man. What's the word? Is it? I don't wanna butcher the word. I think it's consummate or something like that. Let me look for it. I think I'm getting the wrong word. Consummate. Yeah, consummate. And I said the completion of a marriage by an act of sexual intercourse. A marriage may be consummated despite the use of contraceptive sheath. If a spouse is incapable of consummation or refuses without good reason to consummate the marriage, these may be grounds for annulment of the marriage. But basically, marriage is sexual intercourse. That's why, see, I don't know if people notice, people use their brains. The way the Most High designed men and women when it comes to sex is very different. Not specific, I'm not talking about just the genitals or genitalia, but the act of sex. What happens when a man and a woman lose their virginity for the first time? For a man, nothing happens. But for a woman, she bleeds. The hymen is stripped, is bleed. And when you read the scriptures, blood is also a sign of a covenant, agreement. So when you have sex with a woman loses her virginity and has sex for the first time, she is now in an agreement, right? It's a sign, that blood is a sign that you are claimed, your own, right? It's proof, it's a sign that you are claimed, you are owned by a man. That's why you bleed. And guess what? You bleed once. You're only supposed to bleed once. Why? Because you're only supposed to have one man in your lifetime. But do men bleed when they have sex? No, they don't. You see? Men, I'm trying to wrap up this rant before I read the scriptures. Men have millions of sperm, right? Because we need to breed. We're supposed to be breeding up women, right? And when I say woman, I'm talking about single women, because if a woman is already having a man, you're not supposed to be sleeping with a woman that has a man, because that's adultery according to the Bible, and that's when violence and fights will happen, because you're taking someone else's property. Yes, women are property to man. What else? There's more women than men. So if you want to put this quote unquote monogamous relationship where everybody's supposed to be one with each other, well, one man, one woman, then that means a lot of women would die single and childless, that's wicked. That's wicked. The Lord told us to be fruitful and multiply. He told Adam. What else? Yeah, women go through menopause at a certain age. I think around 40 to 50. But guess what? Men can still produce, develop sperm at those ages, even till he drops dead. So what does that tell you? Men are supposed to be constantly breeding. See? Well, not the same. But anyways.
The species,
which is how polygamy existed for so long.
Used to
raise children.
Yes, it used to be. That used to be how it was done. Marriage, by the way, wasn't just a contract. It wasn't even so much a ceremony. It was just that's my woman. I had a kid with her, then that's the one that I'm with. That's the one I'm invested in right now. And so when I talk about men and women being different, we say, "Oh, you're the weaker sex."
So rewind that.
Father to help. We need investments in those children to ensure the survival of the species,
which is how polygamy existed for so long.
Used to
raise children.
Yes, it used to be. That used to be how it was done. Marriage, by the way, wasn't just a contract. It wasn't even so much a ceremony. It was just that's my woman. I had a kid with her, then that's the one that I'm with. That's the one I'm invested in right now.
That's what marriage is. You pick the woman you want. You slept with her. You took her virginity. Boom. You had children with her. Bam. That's it. So all this extra shit, which obviously in the Bible there's weddings, but I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But we always used to go into Mary and Joseph. Mary and Joseph had sex, man. It's just that they had sex before their wedding gathering. And she was already with child. So stuff like that in society can look bad. Oh, you got a child before you got, quote unquote, before the wedding or whatever. You got a baby bump, in your wedding dress or whatever, In society, people will look down at you. But because in the scriptures, in Apocrypha, let me get these couple of scriptures and say what I've got to say. This is Genesis 24, and go straight to the point. Verse 67, the last verse. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So he just took the woman. This is what I want to be with. Popped her, slept with her, took her into his mum's tent. What do you think they were doing in that tent? You damn right. They were having sex. And she became his wife. That's how they became. You didn't hear anything about wedding. You didn't hear anything about popping the question. You didn't hear anything about him going down on his knee and saying, please, will you marry me? Where is that in the Bible? Yeah? See, this is this modernized, effeminate doctrine that has been spewed in society. Yeah? Like the gentleman said,
to help, we need investments in those children to ensure the survival of the species,
which is how polygamy existed for so long.
Used to
raise children.
Yes, it used to be. That used to be how it was done. Marriage, by the way, wasn't just a contract. It wasn't even so much a ceremony. It was just that's my woman. I had a kid with her, then that's the one that I'm with. That's the one I'm invested in right now. So
that simple. And Isaac brought her into his mother's Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, which is the one he wanted to be with, and she became his wife. And he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. It's that simple. Genesis 2, verse 23, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Yeah, you come from man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh, man. Yeah, and how do you become one flesh? By having sex, by having intercourse. That's why your penis comes out, and your penis is external organ, and a woman is internal. So, what do they say? What's that? I can't remember the phrase, but basically the puzzle fits together. So you're one, and the act of sex proves that you're one flesh. You shoot up your sperm in her, DNA goes into her, she starts to act and think like you a bit. You produce children that will look like you guys. You're one. She gets used to, over time, she gets used to, the way you think, the way you say things. Then she'll develop she'll anticipate your needs and stuff like that. She knows you now, Yeah, I was thinking of a scripture.
Men and women being different. We say, "Oh, you're the weaker sex." You'll never hear me call women the weaker sex. I always say they are the vulnerable sex. And so, what do you need if you have one member of the sex that is the most vulnerable of the two? What do you need to balance that out? You need strong, dominant, violent men who can protect that woman and be parentally invested in that woman and provide for that woman. And that's why when we talk about high value men today, we're still really referring to the needs and the psychological needs and the instinctual needs, like the brainstem lizard brain needs of women back in millennia ago on the sub-Saharan African savannas back then, because that's what they're looking for. That's why they're sexually attracted to a guy who's built, a guy who's dominant, a guy who's taller than they are, a guy who has a good jawline, because it shows that he's got higher testosterone content. There's all kinds of physical cues. Now, you can argue with me about the science, you can argue with me about Darwin, you can argue with me about whatever, but what you're not going to argue about on this show, every time these girls come in here, is exactly what they want. Every time they come in here reflects back to exactly what I've been talking about from our evolutionary past. That's why it is important to understand those things. And even if it's not 100% provenly true, right? We're saying it's just so backwards rationalization or whatever, it still provides a predictive framework. And you know what? That predictive framework works right here on this show probably in another couple of hours.
Yeah, that's it really on that, man. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, in this video, sex is marriage, man. Marriage means an agreement, a covenant. Yeah, with that, shalom.